Right down the street?
Yeah, I went there yesterday. Man, the food was off the chain. And the chicken was like, how they be saying it? Like, to die for.
Whoa.
To die for.
To die for, brother?
I'm saying, I mean, the chicken was good. You know what I'm saying?
Can't you just say the chicken was good? Does it have to be to die for? That sounds a little effeminate.
Did you wear skinny jeans while you were eating the chicken?
Nah, I'm saying, I'm saying it was good, man.
Was it rainbow chicken?
Hold up, man. I just wear the chicken was good.
Joke with a sparkly buckle on while you.
Was the server doing a sissy bounce?
Man, I'm just saying, the chicken was good. Look, man, the chicken was good, no homo.
No, the time has passed for no homo.
You're supposed to say it before, brother.
It's like a disclaimer.
I can't say, I just said no homo, though. There's no regulation on when you can say no homo. What are y'all, like a regulatory governing body over no homo or something?
Brothers and sisters, don't get caught up. Don't let the homosexual poltergeist pull you in. We are the final front in the war against white sex. Stand strong. This African service announcement has been brought to you by War on the Horizon Radio.
War on the Horizon. You gotta love it.
No.
St. Code for kids. Liberation schools. Yeah. Teach the babies. Let's rise. Peace to the seas, the cream of the crop. I'm here to give you truth so you rise to the top. Our enemies trying for your mind up with lies, but I'm here to protect you, make sure you survive. Open up your first eye, don't fall for the traps. Say no to drugs and be proud to be black. Black is the essence, the elders gave the lessons. You the future warriors, here to resurrect this. Here's a gift that I'm willing to share. It's quite rare, and it took a little time to prepare. Every letter and every word is truly sincere. African youth, you're the best, others can hardly compare. Love the melanin in your skin unconditionally. Despite the misery connected to its history, trichology has our people treating it foolishly. Before slavery, our roots were surrounded by royalty. Every generation is supposed to get better than the latter, but we separated from our ancestors. Let's bridge the gap, become whole again, live from the soul again, learn to grow again. I remember when I was younger, I sit on my daddy's shoulder, wishing I was older. Now I'm a grown up, but I don't know much. It's time for Sankofa. It's time for Sankofa. We build our own schools for our children's needs. The enemy's schools breeds fools and fiends. By all means, we convene to put them on the path of power and high esteem. If you don't know where you come from, why you standing where you standing, where you going, can you answer? We were masters before master. We have gathered together to get it together. From now and forever after, never sever. Our bond will never shatter ever. Boys and girls, the world is yours. You have options. See that the choice is yours. Win or lose, the elders will help you. An individual without a village is just an empty vessel. Raise the babies, frequencies, love, respect, and dignity. Decency can be cool too. School the youth, equip them with the tools to live. Left foot forward, trample over evil. Know what it means to be you. By nature, you're righteous people. Don't be afraid to be you. Fear is in the mind. Reality is you will align with the divine. Calling on the ancestors for guidance. Applying G.O.D. energy, building manifest through high science. Coming in from the cold, embracing the sun on our own. Now we know what we know. We want to go. Let the seeds grow, let the trees grow. Cause you never know. Cause you never know what fruit they may bear. What fruit they may bear. Let the seeds grow, let the trees grow. Cause you never know, cause you never know what fruit they may bear. Yeah, what fruit they may bear. Yeah, let the seeds grow, let the trees grow. Cause you never know, cause you never know what fruit they may bear. What fruit they may bear, what fruit they may bear, what fruit they may bear. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, same code for kids. Peace. I said, Asiatico. Peace and Liberation School. We're taking initiative to raise the minds of our babies. Because these death camp so-called schools have been miseducating us for far too long. Yeah. We got the guard truth. Yeah. Baruchi, silent teacher. He really teaches, by the way. I mean, as a professional. Then we got the great ambassador, O. It's what we do, man. We live this. Word. Glorious.
My ancestors woke me up this morning. They said, Shabazz, you do know what time it is. I said, what time is that? They said it's wartime, so welcome to the war front. Yes, I just stole Genie's introduction and I done kicked him off his own station. That's how we do things. You might be wondering, where is the irritated Genie at? I have no idea, but I heard a rumor that he may be traveling around looking for some new and exciting DJs to host some new programs on War on the Horizon. So he will be back with us in about 2 weeks. So this week you are stuck with me. I know it's been a long time, but I am back in the house. And next week you have a special treat. I don't want to miss this one myself because Sister Nefertari will be the guest host, and we know we have not heard from her in far too long on War on the Horizon. She will be the guest host, and she will be interviewing Brother Body Shots, and they're going to be talking about the real story about the civil rights movement and Black freedom fighters like Rosa Parks. And I've seen Body Shots kind of talking a little bit here and there about this on Facebook, so I know that this show is going to be hot. So at least for the next 2 weeks, the ladies are running the show. Very exciting. And then after that, of course, the irritated Genie will be back with us. For everybody that wants to know what has been up with Angela Freeman, aka Lady Shabazz, I can't even say I've been relaxing really, because I've still been busy. My goal was to relax and it hasn't gone that way. But you can always stay up to date with me by going to my website, authorangela.freeman.com. I am also on YouTube, and I've actually done some pretty cool shows on there within the last week or so. My last show was actually with Brother Body Shots. We were talking about interracial dating, and he has absolutely no act right whatsoever. So that is a classic show. You can check that out. I also put up a talk that I had, like a roundtable that I had with some teen girls over the weekend. It was kind of a nice thing, kind of see where their heads are at and what's going on with our teens. And I was pleasantly surprised. I think that there's a lot that we can work with there, and we're definitely going to have to do some things directed at the teens because I think that we're neglecting them quite a bit. So you can go to YouTube, type in Angela Freeman, and you can check those out. What else is going on? Oh, yeah, Facebook. The racists at Facebook, not only did they shut down the War on the Horizon page, which, by the way, we started a new page. So just type in War on the Horizon, Black Resistance to the White Sex Assault, and it will pop up. Be sure to like that because we had quite a few thousand other likes on the other page. And I'm not sure if people are aware that we have a new Facebook page so you can keep up with everything that's going on and the show topics and what have you. So you be sure to like the new Facebook page. Also, when they did that, they blocked me from my account that I was using because I was moderating the War on the Horizon page. And what happened was we were swarmed by rednecks and racists who were coming in there, calling us the N-word, calling us monkeys, telling us to go back to Africa, all kinds of madness. But that was okay. I mean, it was like 700 or 800 of them that I had to delete. We were just inundated. That was all right. But when they saw that we had some pictures up of like lynchings and the homosexual assault, things like that, that wasn't okay. So they shut down the War on the Horizon page and blocked me, but they did not delete my account. So when you go there, it still looks like the account's active, but they won't let me log in. When I try to log in, they give me an error message. And I've tried to have that fixed quite a few times. And of course they are not fixing it. So I lost access to my God's Gift page and my Conscious Entertaining page. So when you go and like the new War on the Horizon page, be sure to like Angela Freeman, the author Angela Freeman page as well. Because that's the only way you'll be able to keep up with me, either there or through the website. And one last request, I was talking to Jeannie about this last week. because I guess there's some coons who come to War on the Horizon. When they saw that the Conscious Book of ABCs had a page in there for the letter D, somebody did not like what the letter D represented. And if y'all got the book, y'all already know. So they actually left me a negative review on Amazon for the Conscious Book of ABCs because they said that it's hateful and we should all get along and blah, 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 blah. We shouldn't be calling a white man the devil. So if you have that book, feel free to go to Amazon and leave me a review, because right now that book has 1 star just because of this one coon, because nobody else has reviewed it. So feel free to hop on over to Amazon and review that book or any of my books. But definitely that book. We can't let the coons win on that. She didn't even buy the book. She just saw the D was for devil and she didn't like it. She decided to protest a little bit. So Jeannie told me to make sure I mentioned that today. So that is more than enough about me. I do have some exciting news, and you may have guessed it already since I told you that the Irritated Jeannie would be back here, not next week, but the following week, is that we actually did make our goal for the month of October. Actually, as of last night, we had $570. So that is awesome. I was a little worried at first. It seemed like, people were cooning a little bit, but we got those donations to come in. So what happens is that the extra money we're going to put towards the following month. And what we're going to try to do is stay at least 1 month ahead so that we know that our shows will be on consistently. So that would mean that we would need $230 for next month, and we're hoping that we can actually get that money by October 1st. That way we know that the following month is paid for, so there's no surprises and we can plan a little bit better. So if you have not given yet, there is still time to give, or if you wanted to give for next month to keep War on the Horizon on the air, feel free to do that, especially since it seems like Jeannie thinks that he may have found some new hosts to give you some new programming, keep it fresh. It is definitely worth the investment. We want to keep it going. So that's pretty much what's going on with us. We have a really good show for you today. It's going to be all about education, and we have a special guest with us. I'm going to go on and read this bio here because it gives a lot of information about our guests and where they're going to be coming from. We're going to call the guest today Dr. Rusty Shacklin. So Rusty Shacklin has been an educator for nearly 15 years. He has taught or been an administrator over every grade level, preschool through 12th grade, and taught undergraduate level courses in college. He's worked in private schools, public schools, and charter schools. He's traveled extensively to Africa, Europe, South America, and the Caribbean. He reads extensively, a minimum of 2 to 4 hours a night, following the directive of Honorable Marcus Garvey's life lessons and following Carter G. Woodson, who said, there are 2 types of education, one that is given to you and one that you take for yourself. The one that you take for yourself is far more important. Shackleton's primary focus is on traditional methods and content of African socialization and enculturation and education. How did our children effectively learn to run nations and be powerful for the majority of our existence? What must our children know how to do in terms of skills and character to return to greatness in the generations to come? Dr. Rusty Shacklin's essential theory is all information is not knowledge. You can be made dumb by the wrong type of information. All knowledge is culturally based and designed to either make us servants of others or African experts, masters of our own fate. True education is liberation. However, we have failed to acknowledge the destructive nature of what we today call education, and therefore we have not made a serious enough collective attempt to remove all of our children from the mainstream of education and diseducation of our oppressors. The public and private fool system is mentally molesting our children. Today's education system can only create 2 types of black people: 18-year-olds who cannot read and write, who were designed to fuel the prison industrial complex, or blacks who can aid and embed the destruction of black people through advancing white global domination through terror, people like Condoleezza Rice, Clarence Thomas, Colin Powell, or Barack Obama. Other types of black people must have made a personal must have a personal desire to learn truth, which is usually triggered by an event or series of events outside the public school system. We adults must learn and form a collective think tank to organize our own schools to educate our children in the best practices of our ancestors, Pan-Africanism, Black nationalism, and African culture. Our children must know how to analyze and politicize information to advance our people. They must learn the skills to create their own economic system and the skills to work collectively to feed, clothe, protect, heal, educate, and shelter themselves. What we as African people create must be almost the complete opposite of the public school system. While they make the day away from the parents and family longer, we must make time around families longer. They standardize, we personalize. They focus on testing, we focus on learning. They Europeanize, we Africanize. They focus on the use of material, we develop the use of the spiritual. They use the mind to build communities, we use our minds to develop our communities. They build more synthetic things indoors, we build more natural things outdoors. What we build for true socialization and culturation should be unrecognizable to almost all school teachers of today. It must be built with vision beyond their best based on our very best. So there we go. That was a mouthful. But it tells you the caliber of brother we're going to be talking to today, and we're going to be able to educate our children much, much better after this conversation. So pull out your pens, let's take notes, and let's get started educating our children in a much, much better manner than what we're doing now. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Mr. Shacklin on the line. Let me make sure he's here with us. Brother, are you there?
Yes. Good day. How are you? Good evening. Dr. Rusty Shacklin.
I'm wonderful. How are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you for being here on the program. When I read that intro, it was really full of a lot of wisdom, a lot of things that I think that we need to take more seriously, because even nationalists today, a lot of times are just shipping our children off to schools. Sometimes they may be called African-centered schools, but they're still not all that African. And we're just letting them, fill their minds with whatever they feel like. A lot of times it's junk, and then we're wondering what's happening to our children and why they're not coming out right, but we're not really making an effort to really do the things that we need to do as parents. So where do you want to start? I guess I can ask you, what is wrong with the education system? Why is it failing our children?
Well, part of that would be it was designed to destroy our children from the beginning. It was never intended to help rebuild the minds of African people and put African minds back together. Clearly, we suffered severe psychological damage from our enslavement. There was no process after 400 years of mental enslavement. There's no process to rebuild our minds to healthy, whole human beings. I think it is very important we stress to our children what Muda Baraka has recently said, that slavery is not African history. Slavery interrupted African history. And that we were stolen from Africa as experts in many fields. We were stolen from Africa as experts in mathematics, science, architecture, agriculture, you name it. We were experts in these many fields. These fields that we ran our nations with, as you read eloquently in the introduction. We have run nations for far more than many years than we have been enslaved. Our enslavement is a very small period of time in the 250,000 years that we have recorded of our history. Unfortunately, they have us only focused on a small portion of our history. And as commentary says, if all you know is that you came from slaves, then everything looks like progress. So, what is wrong with the school system? There's a good book that you can start with by a European man. Most of us still don't believe stuff until Europeans say it. But this European, his name is John Taylor Gatto, and he wrote a book called Dumbing Us Down, The Hidden Curriculum of Compulsory Schools. He was Teacher of the Year in New York, and he detailed in just that speech, and if you look up that speech, it is online, he details the major ways that the school system is dumbing us down. He would argue it dumbs all children down. I would agree. However, the job that it does on Africans is like anytime the European has a cold, we have a flu. So he has dumbed himself down in an effort to try and completely destroy our minds.
I can definitely agree with that. Do you think that the education system is affecting our boys more than our girls? And if so, why is that?
For years, that has been the discussion. Javanza Kunjufu has published several books. Now, the latest books you can read are coming out by Dr. Umar Johnson. I recommend we read all of those books. However, we learned, initially we thought that they were going to arrest black boys. They were trying to arrest all black boys. But now the statistics are showing in New York City, out of every 100 black people arrested, 51 are women. So going after the boys was just to destroy the most evident part of our community. The goal and intention is to destroy all black people.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that.
I
wasn't aware of that at all.
Yes. Our children learn completely different than European children, and that is not a fault of our children. The worldview that I've studied is that our children walk into the classrooms with everything they need. They come here brilliant. They are gifted. It is not the European idea of tabula rasa. Tabula rasa is the idea that our children are a blank slate or an empty cup, and we're supposed to walk into the classroom and fill their minds with ideas. That's not the truth. That's a European reality. For our children, they come with all the gifts of the ancestors. They're already born brilliant. They're actually, the longer they stay here, the dumber they get. We had Dr. Kamal Cambone speak to our class, and one of the key pieces he said to the class is that the school systems are de-Africanizing them. They're whitenizing them. So the more our children are in touch with their true spiritual selves, the more that they're free to think freely, they're actually African. When they go into these schools, that's, for all of them, boys and girls, it's a process of destroying that spirit within them. It's a process of conforming them. Again, there's another European that people can look at. His name is Sir Francis Drake. And he says that you can type in a video on YouTube where he talks about how schools destroy creativity. That's, again, for all children. The schools at this time, again, are no good for any children. But for our children, they're even worse. I can give numerous personal examples. I can also give examples from books that speak in detail about the death and destruction that occurs within these schools. And I don't really call them public schools. I call them the public food system, as many brilliant brothers today and sisters call it, the public food system. I also don't call it the mainstream anymore. It's not mainstream education. It's not mainstream media. It is the pain stream, because that's all it is doing is a stream of pain. Hurt people hurt people. And that's what we have in media, and that's also what we have in these schools. It's people who are very damaged that are in front of our children. Our children have never been good listeners, but they never fail to imitate. So when you put people in front of them that have poor morals, poor values, poor character, no commitment to the uplift of our race, no commitment to identifying as an African, then all of those things are transmitted to our children. European culture is just destructive in nature by itself, and history reveals that. Chancellor Williams wrote in detail about that in both of his books. So the schools teach dog-eat-dog competition. They teach rugged individualism. They teach our young people that you do whatever you can to get the grade. They teach our children that things are compartmentalized. That's very European of the schools, that math is somehow not associated with social studies. Social studies is not associated with English. English is not associated with science. So they just come out of these schools confused, and there's no order to these subjects. And that's what John Taylor Gatto talks about in detail in his book, is that these things are taught as unrelated. And because of that, it just teaches confusion and chaos. to our young, brilliant minds.
Definitely.
And I argue, as I always argue, that all of our children, every single one of our children is brilliant. All of our children, I wish our parents would go to them and tell them that the children are the greatest thing that we've ever done. I wish every parent would say to their children, out of everything I've ever accomplished in life, you are the greatest thing I've ever done. That's our children are our greatest accomplishment. 100 years from now, it will not matter how many cars we have, how nice our home is, how many vacations we took. What will matter is how much time and energy we put into building the minds of our children and what they will pass on to the next generations and the next generation.
That's interesting. You said that. I had a discussion last week with a sister on infant mortality and why Black children seem to die more than white children. And one of the things that was brought to the table is that from the beginning, before they're even born, from time of conception, there's a feeling of not wanting our babies. They can feel that even in the womb, that they're not wanted. The first thing we ask somebody when we find out if they're pregnant is, what you gonna do? It's never a welcome. It's never a rejoicing, or very rarely a rejoicing over this new life and doing whatever you can to make them feel welcome. And I think that's something that we need to definitely improve on and change our attitude on, because that's a very European mentality to have. One thing that I've struggled...
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. One thing that I've struggled with... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying absolutely. In our tradition, children are considered the reward of life. In our traditions, the whole way we operate revolves around our children. In traditional Africa, the child is actually never away from their parents. If they're not on the mother's back, they're imitating their fathers in the fields, or they're imitating their fathers at their jobs. So the whole idea of us even taking our children and passing them over to somebody is foreign and is European. When the community comes together before a child is born, huge celebrations are done for our children, like you said, before they even come here, because we know that each one of them has a purpose. Each one of them was sent here with a specific reason. And if we don't nurture their brilliance, that is our fault. But I'm sorry, sister, I would like to follow your lead. Please continue.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. That's definitely needed, because I think that's something that we forget in the scheme of things. We almost are looking at them as a burden instead of a blessing, and I think that's very important. One thing that I struggle with is that I've always said when I have children, I want to homeschool them. But I also realize that I'm a product of the public school system, and I was educated, in a certain way. And so how would, the masses of us who basically were just, raised in a very European environment, just memorization, that kind of learning, how do we then go and try to teach our children something different, because we don't have a model to base it on, and our brain is kind of fit into this little box, and we'd have to be able to think outside the box to really make a change in our children? Where do we begin?
That's an excellent question. One thing is, I do want to say, to answer the last question, there's a book called Welcoming Spirit Home, Ancient African Teachings to Celebrate Children and Community by Sobun Fusome. I highly recommend we read that book, and it even talks about the early birthing process and the celebration of children before they're born. To answer your question, the reason why they must control the education, socialization of our youth is because I firmly believe this is the key to our liberation. If we can get this right, we can fix things in less than 3 generations and fix them for good. What we don't realize is when they came to Africa, they killed many of the warriors. They killed many of the elders because they were like walking libraries. And they stole the children because they felt they could mold the minds of the children. Again, Dr. Kamal Cambone says the first one to the minds of the children wins. So the answer to your question is, the best thing we can do is come together and form small study groups amongst like-minded parents. We don't need to talk loud. We need to be very secretive, and almost like in tradition, form secret societies. These secret societies will study and practice the best of our traditions. They'll meet regularly. They'll share food. They'll sit down as a group. And when they have very young children, they can put the young children in the middle while they read the works of people like, numerous works. Read the works of Dr. Asa Hilliard. Read the works of Julius Nyerere, who wrote Education. He wrote an excellent piece called Education for Liberation. You can start to read the works that have come before. Read even some of the people who are excellent teachers but may not have been teaching African-centered information. So there's just slipped my mind. There's a woman who's in Chicago who used to teach very young children how to read, and she would teach them classics. And what would be good for us is instead of reading European classics, we start to read African classics. We read the works of Aikwe Ama. We read the works of Chinwezu. We read traditional African stories. And instead of our children getting their minds filled with these European stories and Asian stories and other racist stories like Disney, we start to fill their minds with the best stories of our ancestors. And it doesn't matter, even if you're a strong parent now and your child is in the public school system, you're still learning while they're learning. So now you take them out of that and you continue to learn while they're learning, but no longer are you learning the best of their information, their cultural practices and traditions, but you learn ours. And it's a simultaneous process. And your children will have more respect for you than ever because, as Muhammad Ali said, who's a boxer, but he said children don't want your presence, they want your presence. Again, children don't want your presence, they want your presence. Too many times now we have to work so hard that we expend, we'll try to buy them the PlayStations to replace what they really want. More children than I meet, they want to have good conversations with their parents. That's more than anything. They really want to hear the stories of their grandparents. They want to hear good stories. They want to spend time with them. They want to play catch with them. They want to run and climb in the trees and play board games with their children. That's what our children are really calling for. And we do that in groups. You can't raise a child alone. You need to have times where other people are working with your child. We need the best of everybody's skills to be in front of our children. Are you still there, my sister?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Just taking in the information. One thing that I've noticed over the years, and at least for me, it started back in the 90s, and I'm sure it's a lot worse now, is that in a lot of the quote unquote inner city schools, they started taking out a lot of the arts programs and music programs, dance programs, things like that. How is that affecting our children? Because I see them getting more and more overweight. I see them claiming that they have ADD and things like that, but they're not really having that chance to be creative and be active during the day like a lot of us used to have.
Yes. Again, the best way to think of it is in terms of what would people do to try and destroy our children? Working in the school systems for so long, every decision I see made makes sense only if you look at it in the context of, yes, that's a good idea if you want to destroy black children. The reason why I say that is, for example, at a school where a lot of the children are not coming in on time, and also the school has a low rate of attendance, the administrators at that school will decide, now, any child who comes in after 9 o'clock, say, they will automatically be suspended. So now the suspension rates shoot through the roof. And many times you sit there scratching your head like, how does this make sense? How does it make sense to suspend more children and keep them out of the schools? And again, it only makes sense if you want to destroy the children. Charter schools are destroying our children. They are experiments with our children. They're the process of privatizing schools. Many of us have not figured out that the same people who own and control the school systems are the same people who own and control the prisons and the social service systems. These are all multi-billion-dollar industries that are profiting from our dysfunction. And that's why we'll find schools looking more like prisons when prisons should look more like schools. Every single thing that we could discuss would show you that our schools are moving in the wrong direction. Charter schools, one of the things they did, most charter schools have removed sports. I have family members, even my own father has said that he wouldn't have made it through school if it wasn't for basketball. they're removing every single thing. In fact, if we look at the history of hip-hop, a lot of it came because they're removing art from the school. We did graffiti on the outside wall. If they're removing dance and movement from the school, we take the cardboard and started breakdancing outside. They remove music from it. We get old albums and we start scratching those albums and making up our own music. We are always, at our core, Africans. In every position we've ever been in, we always re-Africanize whatever it is. We take lemons and make lemonade, is another way of putting it. But we're brilliant at that.
Definitely. Do you think... Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Do you think that black children's brains work a little bit differently than white children's? Like a white child seems like they can just sit there in a boring class and absorb information, and they're cool with that. But black children need to be up and moving around and you know, learning in a different way. And that's why a lot of times they want to label us with all these learning disabilities, because really we're just not being you know, inspired in school, and we need inspiration, just not to be told, well, memorize this. We need to actually be inspired.
I recently read a good book, and it said, if I would show you a picture and the picture didn't have you in it, you would look at that picture for a matter of a couple of seconds. If I showed you a picture and it had you in it and you could see yourself, you would pay more attention to your outfit. You'd pay more attention to how your position was, how you looked, your hair, and all those things. Same thing with the curriculum. If the children don't see themselves in it, then they'll look at it for a couple seconds, and then they lose interest. But if they see themselves throughout the curriculum, then just like that picture where they're in it, they start to focus on it and pay more attention to it. Our children, as Dr. Amos Wilson says, and I recommend read any of the works of Dr. Amos Wilson, any and all of them. The man was a complete genius, an underrated genius. Every single one of his pieces need to be studied, and we need to further advance his work. But Dr. Amos Wilson was very specific in saying that the purpose of education for the European is completely different than the purpose of education for us. In terms of, we both are trying to obtain power, but they have to maintain the current position and advance their current position. For us, we are not trying to maintain their current position. We have to obtain power. So in order to do that, the education cannot be the same at all. It must be very, very different. They have obtained power through, from stealing, robbing, killing, manipulating, doing those things. It becomes essential for us not to do those things to get into position of power. But getting back to how we learn, we are very deep thinkers. We don't deal with just surface level. There's an Igbo proverb that says, if you want to lie, speak English. And that is very clear because it says when they learn something, if they learn democracy, they say it's one person, one vote. We know that's a lie. They've never had democracy. They've never had democracy, whether it was in Greece. They never had democracy, whether it was in Rome, whether it was any place. They've never had democracy. They may have had an aristocracy with government ruled by the rich. What we have today, which is a corporatocracy, government ruled by corporation. So they learn words so they can manipulate others and they can take advantage of others. We can't learn those same words in that same fashion, because if we continue to manipulate and take advantage of each other, we'll continue to be in the same predicament that we're in right now. So just to give you some quick ways our children learn. We're masters of word. We take word, we manipulate word all the time. That's why we create different slang. That's why a person in Baltimore talks different than a person in Washington, D.C., and they're very close in terms of proximity. We deal with the symbol and the symbolic. We do symbols to represent many different thinking patterns. We do metaphors and parables. We do very well with stories. Our children love stories. Animal stories are excellent to break things down. We also like stories about warriors. We like stories about ancient African kings and queens. If we start to teach through those stories, that pulls them in. Healthy food is essential. We need to teach our children while we're eating food. Or sitting over a table and dining, as you saw in old movies, not old, I guess, but soul food. Even when you sat around with grandma, brought the whole family together, and we had conversations. We learn like that. If your child is having issues with being hyperactive, if you gave them blueberries in the morning, that would make them calmer, so they'd be more successful in school. Getting rid of the sugars, getting rid of the milk, and really having healthy foods would help our children learn faster. Field trips and experiences. Taking our children out to field trips and experiences works much better. And bringing the children back and having conversations, discussions. Having school inside of a classroom that's obsolete. We shouldn't do it anymore. If we do it, we're only copying our oppressors. We need to get out and have real life experiences. Take our children to the grocery stores. Take them to the back of the grocery stores. Take our children to import and export businesses. Take them to the airport. Allow them to see what happens when airports are brought in. Take them everywhere so they actually experience the real world and they can see what nation management looks like. Proverbs and riddles. Our ancestors spoke in Proverbs. We need to begin to speak again in Proverbs. Said storytelling, age sets, when they're grouped around people of common age, and they grow and develop friendships from very young all the way up in the same age set. Fables, role play, projects, exercise and movement, like you mentioned. Our children have to be up and moving. Sitting down is damaging to the body. It creates this obesity. It creates this destruction in their bones. Song, dance, and rhythm. We know if you put it to a beat, our children love it. We need to create our own African-centered video games. There's no reason why a child can sit for 10 hours and spend time. And these video games are completely saturated with stuff to destroy black people. Grand Theft Auto, Vice City has a mission to kill all the Haitians. There's missions where you go in Black Ops and you kill all the Nigerians. There's missions where you fight on behalf of Savimbi, who was backed by the racist apartheid government, to fight in Angola, when we should be fighting on the other side with the Cubans and the Angolans fighting against the South Africans and Ronald Reagan. But there's even a mission where in one of the video games where you kill Fidel Castro. So these are the type of games our children are playing and getting brainwashed by. We need to create our own African-centered video games in which they're uplifting and unifying and liberating our people. Our children also learn through rituals and rites. We don't have a lot of rituals anymore. We need to rebuild rituals that occur regularly where they can see black people interacting with each other, honoring our ancestors, and honoring our freedom fighters, particularly our freedom fighters, who a lot of us are not talking about, which are the ones who've been locked up 20 to 30 years as political prisoners, like Russell Maloom Schultz, Move 6, Mumi Abu Jamal, Paranza Boas, Matul Shakur, Jalil Muteen, Imam, Jamil Amin, Marshall Eddie Conway, Sekou Dinger, Sundiata Kohli, and Gola 3. Our children need to be speaking about these people and writing to these people on a regular basis to understand what this country does to our freedom fighters of modern day times. Are you still there, my sister?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm here and I'm taking notes like I'm sure everybody else is. So I know that we're talking about a totally different kind of education. You're saying, there needs to be movement. We need to be outside. We need to be taking field trips that are meaningful where they can actually learn something. So if somebody wants to start doing this, they may have a child that is in the public school system and they just want to supplement, or maybe they're a homeschooling parent. What would a typical day look like? Because I know some homeschooling parents who, as you said, they just copy the regular system. They have desks and their children sit at desks and work out of workbooks. And it sounds like you're saying that we need to do something completely different. So can you give us maybe an idea of what a typical day might look like?
Absolutely. One thing is, as Dr. Amos Wilson points out, our days need to start later. Our children, their brain functioning is higher if you could start closer to 9 or 10 o'clock. Some homeschoolers start as late as like in the afternoon. The key piece is knowing the child. Oftentimes, people are very impressed with how I discipline black children, because in the school system, they oftentimes bring black men in there to try and discipline our children. But the real reason that I have is a relationship I have with the students. I study them meticulously. They are my focus. They are my passion. And that's the problem, too. You have a lot of people in front of our children. Some see them as a job. Some see it as a career. Other people see it as a calling. You want to have the people in front of your children that see it as a calling to be able to educate and uplift our children. So if you study your child, you'll know what part of the day do they function best in. Again, a homeschool could look more like, it could be something where you have groups of kids, groups of families meet under a tree. You live in a warm weather climate. They can meet at a library. It doesn't have to always be inside someone's home. the home is really just a home base. That's where you can come back and have discussions. Just to name, so say you get up at 10 o'clock, you have a conversation with your child about how they are feeling. You know, you serve a very healthy meal. They should be working with you in the kitchen to serve the meal, so they're learning how to cook. They should have some maybe cleanup tasks or chores around the house immediately, which will include vacuuming. Those are also considered rituals. A lot of our children today don't have chores. They should have chores as soon as they can walk. They should start to develop chores. We'll watch the young African child have like a pretend vacuum cleaner while the adult is vacuuming. That's good. That's healthy behavior. They should have their own forks and spoons that they have to put away while you're cleaning out the dishwasher. So then after that time, you can take the field trip. After you finish eating, having a good discussion, that's when you take a field trip. Again, these field trips can be like, take a trip to, I call it Bank of a Murderer, but Bank of America, Wachovia, Virginia, in Virginia, Wachovia, and D.C. You could take them to these two places and have a conversation over the treatment of people to understand how these banks look different in different communities. Take them to if you're in D.C., take them to the Mint where the money is actually printed. Help them understand how is this money really backed up. Is it backed by gold? What is it backed by? Is it backed by silver? You can take them to the IRS buildings. You could take them to different types of prisons. You could take them to different universities. You can take them to music studios, to emergency rooms, to welfare offices. You can take them to all these free museums they have here, like the Air and Space Museum, the Native American Museums, the Botanical Gardens. You take them to the Housing Authority and have them write a paper on how the people at the Housing Authority treat our people, why this might be. You can have some serious dialogue and conversation. Take them to the homeless shelters. Take them to Blacks and Wax in Baltimore. Take them to Brother Nati's amazing bookstore and have them pick up some books from there, but also have them talk to owners. You can take them on tours of different private schools and middle schools so they can see the different school wings. You can take them, like I said, to the international airport. Take them to different factories. Take them to law firms. Take them to the Library of Congress. Take them to different libraries in different communities so they can discuss that. Take them to the Department of Social Services. And take them to, like I said, UPS or other import businesses, construction sites, and the post office. Take them to Union Station, have them observe people and identify different things about people. All of our children need to be involved in serious martial arts, multiple different types of martial arts. So also they should be able to look at people and size people up from very young ages. Take them to the bus and the train and the transportation authority. Take them to printing presses. There should be no limit to the amount of places that we could take them. And a lot of this stuff happens. If a parent has some place they need to go, like the post office, then they can also schedule, because they should be working with parents to pay bills. Teach them the real world, the reality that we live in. If the child's just a baby, then of course it should be tied to the mother's back during these times. If the child is older, you talk constantly answering questions. We play a game where you try to get to 5 whys. If you can have the child ask you why and you try again to answer that question, try again. Too many times we get frustrated and say, stop asking me questions. That's when we're destroying our child's spirit of curiosity and their desire to want to learn. So we have to continue to fuel and feed their brilliant minds.
Wow, that was a lot of good information. There's a lot that you said that's actually common sense, but not something that a lot of us would have thought about. I mean, once you hear it, it's like, yeah, that's common sense. But a lot of those field trips are very practical, but just something that as a parent you would overlook, you might not even think about. And that's one thing I've been noticing a lot about parents today is that we're not taking an active role in our children's lives. We're almost letting them raise themselves. There's some parents who aren't teaching their children basic hygiene. We used to run to the store and have to buy something and bring back change. Parents aren't teaching their children that. Just the basic, simple stuff that you need to live in today's world, we're not teaching our children. So I thought that those were excellent, excellent examples.
And one of the other ones I want to say is one of the key things to teaching. I think the number one teachers are the parents. The number two teachers number one teachers are the parents and grandparents. In African tradition, if your child if you have a boy child and he doesn't have a strong relationship with the grandfather, then the child will be missing parts of his his centeredness. They need to spend time with their grandfathers. In the African tradition, the child and the grandparents are the closest to the ancestors because we see the world as a cycle. And they can share a strong relationship. It's their grandfather. In fact, there's a book that everybody should read called Kendezi by Fukio Bunseki. And in that book, he shows how important it is that the grandfather teaches the grandson the songs. He teaches them the stories and the traditions of the ancestors. Same for a grandmother and the grandmother's relationship with the granddaughter. Those are where the stories come from, the cooking lessons, all of these things. Family is the centerpiece. That's extremely important. Another piece, though, is observing nature. Nature is a major, major teacher. Even from, if we can't, you should have your child out in nature, meditating in nature, but observing animals in nature, building things in nature, playing in nature, climbing trees, all of those things. Like you said, common sense today is not so common. But nature is excellent teacher. And the thing for nature is it teaches very fast. If you say don't touch that animal because that animal's going to bite you, the next thing your child does is touch it, it sees that it's going to bite it right away. Of course, you try to pull back your child and save them, but they realize for every action there's a quick reaction in society. A lot of our children don't learn that because the public school system teaches you act up, you do something wrong, and there is no consequence. Well, the punishment comes much later. It may be at the end of the school day, or maybe several at end of the week. By that time, many of the children have forgot. But nature teaches you almost right away. And again, I said with the children's stories, teaching children's stories, the stories, a lot of them are animal stories. Our ancestors knew that even with martial arts, you had to study how different animals fought each other. I recommend children go on YouTube. There's Planet Earth, Planet Life, those different ones. I prefer to have black people narrating it, if you can, even the ones that have sometimes just to turn off the volume and watch those and try to have conversations about what the animals are doing. What happens to an animal that doesn't stay with their parents? They're oftentimes attacked because they're seen as weak. And I say this to black men, and no irritated genie is very serious about this. Black men, if you're not around your children, you are opening them up to be violated in this cruel society. You have to be around your children. There's an African proverb that says, the one who is absent is always wrong. Again, the one who is absent is always wrong. So if you're not around your children, you're opening them to be violated. Too many of our children are violated because the fathers are not present, the mothers are not present, or the grandparents aren't present, and they're being left to deal with this cruel society. I hope I'm clear on that because it even hurts my heart to talk about it. I have zero tolerance for the abuse of black children. I hope I'm clear with that.
Definitely, definitely. And while we're on that topic, do you have any advice for parents now? Because we know we're on the horizon, so we're always talking about the homosexual assault and the homosexual agenda being pushed in schools. Do you have any recommendations on how to combat that? Because it seems like it's taken over and it's coming from everywhere, and it's very hard to keep your children away from it.
Yeah. So one thing is like a lot of people, like you said, in the nationalist community, we talk black but put our children in our oppressors' hands. We can't continue to do that. I've been in too many meetings where we're sitting and talking about great intellectual ideas that we're going to put into play, but our children are in the next room watching Disney movies like Lion King, which Lion King is based on an African story we know about Sarna Sek, but it makes all the good characters light skinned and all the bad characters dark skinned. And they do that with all those Disney movies, can only perpetuate, the racist system. So I'm not one who says that you can keep the children in the schools. I'm not one who said that you can bring them home and teach them in the evenings. We have no idea of what's going on during the school day, and there's so much that's being taught to our children that the schools call the underlying curriculum. If you want to keep your children's mind healthy, remove them as soon as you possibly can, as soon as you can get them out of there. That's the best way. The next thing is to turn off the tell lies to division. It has to be taken out of that household. We can't say on one hand we don't want our children to talk to strangers, but then we put them in front of a strange television with strange morals and strange values. I know that seems to be one of the great ways to keep them occupied. However, if we teach our children to become chess masters, they could sit for long periods of time playing themselves in a game of chess. Or we could sit with them and play these different other games, like Aware and different games that come from our ancestors. The other thing, like, we have to realize that I usually say these jokingly, but it's very true, that the television has done things that our enslavement could not do to our minds. CBS we need to see as Caucasians Broadcasting Service. NBC is nothing but Caucasians. CNN is Caucasian News Network. BET should stand for Black Eradication Television. MSNBC is more selected or sorry Negroes behaving Caucasian. ABC is always broadcasting Caucasian. Our children, if they are to view it, must have conversations to go along with every single part of it. And we should say, clearly a European made that joke because that's not funny, and we wouldn't laugh at that. Even if we looked at the names of these programs, I must admit I haven't watched television in years, but just the things I hear the students talking about in terms of, like, Pretty Little Liars, Girls Acting Bad, like, all of them are names that are clearly conveying a message to our children that's trying to teach them that to be dumb is good. You remember there was a time we used to be able to say to our children, don't act like a fool, because you act like a fool, you're never going to make no money. Mm-hmm. We can't say that if you allow your children to watch television, because there are tons of fools on television. There's Kim Kardashian, you can't open up your Gmail or Yahoo account without seeing hers come up. What has she done? She's a complete idiot. She's just replacing the other idiot, Paris Hilton. So our children watch these, and Nikki Garbage, all of these different people, and just get completely fascinated by them. And they're getting dumbed down and brainwashed by them. And they're thinking that there's something cute about being dumb. They're valuing their beauty over their brilliance. So we really cut off the television and read. Readers are leaders and leaders are readers. That's one of the key things. And analyze everything. A lot, Irritate Genie said this to me one point, and it's very true. A lot of the teachers, that destroy the minds of our children. And the black teachers have been educated in the same school with the white teachers, so sometimes they're even worse. Because like black cops, they're trying to show off that they can perpetuate the system even stronger. But they don't stand in front of our children and tell our children they don't like them, they don't like being black, they don't like them because they're black, they think their mothers are stupid, they think their fathers are dumb. They don't say those things. But the actions are there. You may have a teacher who'll say to the child, go ahead, tell your parents. See if our kid. That's not going to change anything. Right there, it teaches the child who's in charge and that their parents don't have the ability to protect them in the public food system. You just have tons of things that are going on in the schools that you don't have control over. Too many times I've heard about groups of girls, pushing other girls into the bathroom and chanting at them about their sexuality and trying to convince them that they should choose being homosexual. It's just too much on a regular basis. Not to mention, in school, as Kwame Terry said, we're dealing with people who lie all the time. The only time they tell the truth is the result of a double lie. Columbus didn't discover America, but that's still taught every single day. Europe is not a continent. It is part of Asia. It doesn't fit that. You go through every single piece. That anything that says discovered anything, that's a lie. They didn't discover that. Anytime they teach you about math and science, it's really what they're teaching you is the Europeans' ideas in science. So it puts you in a small framework right off the jump there. Anytime they talk about economics, they're only talking about two types of economics. They're either talking about capitalism or they're talking about socialism, communism. All of those are European economic systems. So it's like you said, in terms of when we were first brought here and enslaved, we thought that freedom was having what the master had. We thought that if we could get free one day, we would have a big white house with a picket fence. We would have a carriage like the master has. We have a top hat like the master has, and that we would be free. And a lot of Africans, as soon as they got off the plantation, particularly I read about ones in Pennsylvania, would actually buy plantations and buy slaves and enslave other Africans because they thought that what the European had was freedom. That's not the case. We can have all their cars and and we'll still just be highly educated servants, giving all our money over to them. So we can't raise our children in that fashion. We have to break free from that mentality, and we have to take our children out of the public food system, and we have to support African-centered schools. And African-centered schools get a bad rap, but the minute a person says something bad about the African-centered school, my first question to them is, did you sit in that class? Were you in that class? Did you participate in the classes? Because if you weren't participating and learning there with your child, it wasn't African-centered. Because Africans keep their children with them as much as possible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, we are right at the 8 o'clock hour, and it's about time to take a music break. Do you mind if we go to the phone lines when we get back?
Absolutely. That sounds wonderful.
All right. Well, go on. If you have not called in yet, call in. The number is 760-569-7676. Participation code 948656#. That's 948656#. So we will be right back after this music break, and the phone lines are already starting to light up. So if I were you, I would go on and call in now. Make sure that we get your call in, and we'll be right back with you.
Black Power family, I want you to get on this joint. Speak from the soul, bro. Dear white supremacy, you thought that you could finish me, but my elders told me you're my moral enemy. Sit down in energy to come at you relentlessly, and I won't give up till there's justice for what you did to me. Crush you like a centipede, blessed with the strength, smarts, and the speed, and the program to end this misery. Turn my woman against me, and now she look at me like I don't respect her and can't protect the seeds. Ignorance and division is what religion breeds. And my mind is deeper than all the 7 seas. So with my 9, I creep up and all you'll ever see is dead crackers click-clacking the deadly melody. No childish ways, so my violent ways make me put my life on the line before I die in the cave. Look for truth in the sky, you can lie in the grave. Either die from AIDS or die from a gauge. Either fight for freedom or die as a slave. I send you back from whence you came because your mind's in the cave. I denounce your Nazism and your Zionist ways. I speak the truth through my words and what I jot on the page. Yeah, this cracker said I was laid off, then he broke out and he played golf. Stress got me plotting, killing Jews like Adolf. White supremacy, gay all the black president voting. I was hesitant cause he ain't picked to represent the red, black, green, the colors I bleed. I keep fighting for my seeds for as long as I breathe. I'm supposed to be mean, but I'm all of my dean. Got me taking shots of tequila and rolling up weed. Would you sell your dignity and risk it all for your dreams? I only roll with the strong, the hand of God intervened. Told me we cut from different fabric, others tore from the seams. Giving you food for thought, you get it raw from the king. Essential minerals, I'm giving you no pork or no wings. This is all alkaline, I never rhyme for the bling. Let's go. Damn. Yo, I can feel it in my soul, like.
All right, everybody, you are tuned in to War on the Horizon. I am your host for the evening, Sister Lady Shabazz. Brother Jeannie will be back in about 2 weeks. And we're here today having a very good discussion on education. We just got done listening to the greatest rapper alive, Brother Bomani, but I hear he's got some competition that Brother Omawali is going to be coming out with the CD very soon, an all-new United Front CD, so we'll see how that goes. We're going to go to the phone lines in just a moment. Do I have you back here with us, brother?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Definitely a good discussion tonight. So go on and call in 760-569-7676. Participation code 948656#. All right.
I just wanted to second that, sister. The Brother Bonnie is one of the greatest rappers of all time.
I know. I always tease him. It was my birthday a couple months ago. He said, happy birthday. I said, see, not everybody gets a happy birthday from their favorite rapper. I'm special. It gives me some bragging rights. We all love Brother Bomani. All right. 2387. You are live on War on the Horizon. 2387. 2387. All right, I'm going to assume that you are just listening in. Don't be shy with your questions and comments, especially if you have children. You definitely want to get that information tonight because his brother is more than qualified. 2255, you're live on War on the Horizon. 2255. Last chance, 2255. All right, just listening in. 2874, you are live on War on the Horizon.
Yes, Hotep. How you doing?
Hotep, how you doing?
All right. I'm just curious. I came in later on the show. I want to get the brother's name, information, contact information.
Dr. Rusty Shacklin. But you can contact War on the Horizon.
Oh, what's your name again?
It's an alias, brother. Dr. Rusty Shacklin.
Okay. All right. Great. All right.
Yeah, you can send an email to liberation@waronthehorizon.com and we can try to get you in touch with the brother.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Hotep.
Hotep. All right. 9898, you're live on War on the Horizon.
Peace, family. I'm just listening.
Peace. Thanks for listening. Uh-oh. Speaking of the greatest rapper alive, do we have him on the line?
BB Fahodier.
BB Fahodier.
BB Fahodier, brother.
What's going on, brother? How you?
I'm good. I'm good, brother.
Yeah, I'm just listening, but I do got a quick question. I have a 3-year-old that is absolutely brilliant, and I just need some, give me a little bit of advice on how to, I guess, instill that Pan-Africanist software into her consciousness, brother.
Great question. First of all, I speak strictly as a educator. I can't speak from a parenting position. So I think parents, again, are the best teachers of their child. But for the young ones, we used to do letter parties. So we would have, if we did, we started with the letter A, we would go all the way through Z. But for each letter party we would have, there would be a freedom fighter associated with that letter. So say it was an M day, we would celebrate M, and M's would be everywhere. Marcus, Malcolm, any place we would try to find as many M's as possible. And we would spend that day looking for M's while we drove in the car. We would spend that day looking for M's in the grocery store. But the beginning and the end of the day would finish off with us discussing Marcus Garvey, with us discussing Malcolm X, with us discussing people's names who begin with the letter M, so they could see that M. Then we would do that through each letter. Songs are absolutely essential. As you know, rhymes, if we just come up with little rhymes, I say stuff to my students all the time in the class, there's rhymes. So I said, take your time, use your mind. Something simple as that. Little phrases, they hold on to those. So when it comes time for them to do a task, and you say to them, all right, it's time for us to sit down and do, this puzzle here. They start getting frustrated with the puzzle. You can say, take your time, use your mind. Those little phrases help our children process. And you might even hear them. And I want to talk again about the different types of games we could be playing with our children. But even when they hear those, you'll see them playing, they'll get frustrated and they say, okay, take my time, use my mind. And you'll be very impressed that this information is getting to them. The other thing, too, is the greatest way to teach is to be. So, brother, I know you are being African. In fact, Mama Rimba Ani, in her book, Yurugu, she also has a book called To Be an African. She says the most revolutionary thing we can do today is be African. So when our children see us using African terms, we should try to use as many African terms as possible. We should try to move away from English as their first language. If we're constantly studying and using terms, whether it's Kiswahili or Twi or Wolof or Yoruba, there's over 2,000 African languages, and all of them are better than the European languages. So we could pick any one of those and begin to teach our children the different words. Another thing, too, depending on where they are in their reading, you can start to pin up on your lamp. You have the African, like 3 different African languages written on the lamps, written on the bookshelves, everywhere, on the toilet, every African words written everywhere. So they can start to learn those words. The average West African child speaks anywhere from 5 to 7 languages. So there's no reason why our children shouldn't be speaking 5 to 7 languages. Since I would like to go over the different other games real quickly.
Please
But in
do.
terms of board games, I said Mancala and Oware. There's Atunwa. There's Onwere. There's African Trivial Pursuit. There's a game called Intervision. There's a game called 10 Days in Africa. There's Stacey McLean's Kings and Queens playing cards. There's Boggles, a good game to play. Monopoly, Connect 4, Chess and Checkers. Of course, these are for older children. But even when little children see old adults playing these games, they get excited and want to play them too. Uno, Slam, puzzles, we said. Memory is a phenomenal game. You can create your own memory cards where you can put African freedom fighter faces. So you can do something where you show an image and they say, who's this? And they say, that's Ella Baker. And you get all excited and have, yeah, excellent, that's Ella Baker. There's lots of animation. Then you have a dance that goes along with the Ella Baker dance. Then you show them another image. Who's this? They say Amos Wilson. Then you do a dance that goes along with that. Who's this? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Everything can have a dance, a song, and a story. I said there's a game called Cash Flow. That's an excellent game for adults to play in order to understand economic systems. A game called Jumbo. There's a game called Go, Scrabble, Anamia, city building games, Zingo, Hopper, Shoots and Ladders, Clue, Trouble, Rush Hour, Brick by Brick, Back in. Those are some games, board games. But playing outside, they could do tag, hide and go seek, catch. We used to play a game too where I love dodgeball. Of course, they took that out of the school system. But there's another game too. You have tag where you have certain people play as J. Edgar Hoover, and the kids all want to stay away from him. Then you have certain people who can unfreeze you. Those are the people that can unfreeze you are the people like, Marcus Garvey could be one who could unfreeze you and liberate you. We used to play games like Capture the Flag. That's a huge, excellent game, a strategy game. Conversations in terms of walks in the park, nature walks, herb identification is essential for our children. That ties in with the cooking, it ties in with the warfare, it ties in with numerous things. Climbing trees, I said, obstacle courses. We create obstacle courses for our children. Jump rope. It's amazing how many of our children don't do double dutch anymore. Those are all essential. After school and weekend activities, we should have our children playing basketball, baseball, swimming, football, boxing, wrestling, debate team, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, African dance, African martial arts, Kupi and Ghana and Guma, comedic yoga, drumming, art class, musical instruments. Our children need to be musical. It taps into another part of our brain. Ropes courses, gymnastics, sailing, camping, paintballing, sewing, carpentry, auto mechanics, cooking, hair braiding. All of these are skills our children should be working on. Storytelling with our children, we should tell our own family stories. You can make up stories. They don't necessarily have to be true. You let your children know that I'm going to tell you a made-up story. Just before they go to bed every night, tell them a story. While you're in the car, one of the things my mother used to do is, this is when I was a teenager, she took the radio out of the car and said, now we have to talk everywhere we go. Another thing, too, is we need to stop asking our children, do you want to go to the museum? No. Have them get in the car. They ask where we're going. You say, wait a couple minutes, you'll find out. You get there, and when you get out of the car, that's when they discover where they are. Then they walk around later on and be like, wow, I really enjoyed what we were doing. Stories about animals with morals, we talk about that. They want to hear stories of rise and the fall of African nations and kingdoms. If we don't know those, I'm going to study those. There's a great book called When We Ruled. You could read that. You could read Chancellor Williams' books. We need to have all of these big books like Check on Your Jokes, Civilization of Barbarism. We need to break those into regular stories for our children. African cosmological stories and the origins of human beings. We need to tell those stories. We know the Asar Set story, the Syrian drama. Those are great, but we need to know all the different Zulu stories. There's a book called Indaba My Children by Credo Mutwa. That's a good book that has a lot of children's stories in it. There's a book called by Harold Corlander, The Treasury of Afro-American Folklore. This is a European writing this book. because he had the money to go over that research. But that book is probably like 800 pages and tells all types of great stories. It has no images of Europeans in it either, so it can still be coming and transmitted through you. You can tell them stories. You think, you know where your child is at. It definitely gets a time when they need to hear the stories of our rebellions. They need to know that we always fought back. We fought back every opportunity we had. So I hope some of those are helpful. The last part I'll say is you should watch your child play with toys. Silently watch your child, because you'll learn a lot about what they think. If they're picking white toys or fighting a lot, it's an indication that you're not exposing your child to enough positive African experiences, that they're probably seeing too much televised vision, or they're surrounded by people who are acting like that in school or wherever other place. Subject workbooks are good. It just, you don't want to have your child constantly working on those, but to give them math booklets, astronomy, anatomy, letters, having posters all over the walls. Haki Madabuli used to say that you could tell how far a child will go in life by how many posters and what the posters are of on the walls. So, you could have on the wall a poster of them vital points that your child could be studying. That could be tied into another poster next to it of acupuncture points. You can have you definitely should have maps. There should be lots of maps on the wall. Every child should have a map of Africa with 55 countries on it. You should memorize those 50 countries and 55 countries, and you should quiz them on them. Name 3 countries in Africa begin with the letter M. Ask them questions on a regular basis. You can sit in the car and play games where you're constantly firing questions at it. They'll get excited by these games. They'll constantly building your mind and their mind. Again, another thing too, if they're young, you want to have art supplies, painting easels, wood blocks, black dolls, of course. And don't get the black dolls that look like chocolate-covered Europeans. Get the black dolls that have kente on them, blocks, dark, beautiful black dolls. Legos are huge, abacuses, radar flyer wagons, remote control cars, model cars, chemistry sets, Lincoln logs. Don't call them Lincoln logs, though, 'cause Lincoln was a racist. But didn't free any slaves. Good book to read on that is Forcing the Glory by Lerone Bennett. It's another person to read anything by Lerone Bennett would be beneficial. And Rubik's Cubes. The kids should be able to do that. Chess is huge. Chess is our game. It was invented by the Moors. We really need to study and master that game again.
Got that, brother?
Thank you, brother. Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you, brother. I appreciate all the information. And one thing I do, I teach my 3-year-old, teach how to play chess. She knows how the pieces move. She knows the name of the pieces. And it's funny you said about watching her or observing her play. She's really into science and into maps and things like that. And she like to put pieces together. Like right now, I'm watching her right now, and she's playing with the Lego blocks like you were talking about. And she has a very vivid imagination. She's over there playing and talking to herself right now, putting the Legos together. But I appreciate all the information, brother. It was very valuable. And I know you got my contact info, so if you could just send me any valuable resource you think I would need to help her, I would appreciate it, brother.
You got it, brother.
Happy 48.
Happy 48. Stay strong.
All right, that was a whole bunch of information. I think I'm going to have to put this up on YouTube for everybody because there's so much information. It's hard to write it all down. So we definitely thank you for all of that. Let's see. Next caller, 6560. You're live on War on the Horizon.
Hotep Black Family.
Hotep.
This is Brother Bobby Johnson. I'm just listening because I came in late. I had school tonight. But if the brother could explain, I'm not sure if he did. If I had just came across a brother like one at a bus stop or something, and he was like 15 years old, what can I say to him to ignite that flame or passion for him to study, to become a warrior scholar?
Great question. I've worked directly with lots of 15-year-olds, lots of teenagers, and they're saying that they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It is true. We can't continue to talk at our children. We have to actually be around them as much as possible. So, for example, I remember one time I was working with a group of young kids, and one of them I know is clearly a drug dealer, because while I was talking to him, he was like, all that stuff you talking about Africa is nice and all, but it don't pay no bills, and all it really do is get me angry and kill. And I'm out here trying to get this money. And he threw some money at me and was like, unless you could show me how to make this type of money, I'm not trying to hear it. So I tell you that because essentially the best thing we can do is build. As black men, we have to build something. We have to build something that attracts our children and shows them, look, you could do this a better way. We oftentimes look at Marcus Garvey as an amazing speaker, but we don't think of the fact that he employed over 250,000 people. It's one thing when you're listening to somebody who is putting money in your pocket. If we could figure out ways, and as Irritated Genie's presentation on Mind Your Black Business is excellent at discussing, we need to figure out ways that we can actually employ our own children. The Panthers had a phenomenal way of doing this too. I don't think we study Honorable Elijah Muhammad's system of reforming prisoners enough, and I don't think we study the survival programs put together by the Panthers. So, of course, we know all of them had newspapers. The newspaper was an excellent way to pass out information. But then they also had free political education programs, which included like the free breakfast program. So they're bringing people in and feeding. That there's free clothing program, the free shoe programs. A lot of these, we're never going to see this in a movie called The Butler, of course. But if we read about these things, we read about the Panthers, it shows they had liberation schools, they had free medical clinics, they had free busing to prison programs, they had sickle cell anemia research foundations, they had free ambulance services. Of course, one of the best things they did too is they traveled around with guns in the cars and had police monitors and actually would stop. And if a brother was getting harassed by the police, they would get out of the car and prevent the brother from getting harassed by the police. They called that the Petition Drive for Community Control of Cops, which started in 1968. These were brilliant ideas that actually pulled the community towards the Panthers. So you actually wanted to hear the Panthers after they gave you a bag of free groceries. You wanted to hear the Panthers after they stopped your father from beating up your mother. Because a lot of times, too, the Panthers would be called to break up domestic violence cases. Because they knew if you called the cops would come in there and would arrest the father. It may not even stop the problem and wait till the mother was beaten half to death and just come up and write a report. With the Black Panthers, you had these strong men and women, and let's not forget that 68% of the Panther Party was women. The breakfast program, a lot of the ideas came from the women. But they would actually go in there and help black people first before they gave them any information. These were survival programs. They were programs designed to prepare us for revolution. And of course, we know what happens with those in terms of COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO is still around in existence, probably called INTELPRO now. And we know they're constantly trying to destroy any black person who be unified and motivate black people to mobilize. I hope that answers your question, my brother.
Most certainly did. I appreciate you, brother, and I'll be holding you.
Speak to your day, brother.
All right. And just a reminder to everybody, next week, our sister Nefertari will be on guest hosting, and it's been far too long since we've heard from her, and her guest will be Brother Body Shots. So that show is definitely going to be hot. You're definitely going to want to tune in next week for that. Next caller, 3566. You're live on War on the Horizon.
Peace, Sister Shabazz. I'm just listening. I just called in. I'm listening.
Peace. Well, thank you for listening. All right. Anybody else that wants to get into the conversation can feel free to give us a call. Again, the number is 760-569-7676. Participation code 948656#. Now, I know earlier you were talking about that we need more rituals. And a lot of us, because we're so disconnected from our culture, I mean, we live here and we say that we're Pan-Africanists and nationalists, but a lot of us really don't know that much about day-to-day life in Africa or what good rituals might be for us. What would be some good rituals that we could start working into our home lives that would benefit our children and their education?
Great question, too, there. Yes, it's unfortunate even those of us who claim we love Africa are still afraid of Africa. It's going to take time for us to move through that process. But a lot when we hear the rituals, we jump back and immediately think that we're talking about like chopping off a chicken's head or something like that. No, rituals can actually be something as simple as every morning. A ritual should be that your child greets you. Your child should say yes to you and not yeah. A ritual is that your child addresses adults differently than they address their peers. Another ritual could be that every morning you may pour libations together. Or a ritual could be that every morning you hug each other as soon as you get up. Rituals don't have to be complicated. Rituals can be very simple, but there's something that a child is just accustomed to. They know that every day on Thursdays that you're going out to dinner at a black-owned restaurant to sit with your children and to talk. Children love those rituals. A ritual could be something as simple as one day a week you decide that you and your child are going to dress the same. And when they get a little older, they think that's corny. We do have to break this myth too that as the children get older, in the middle school and high school ages, that we're supposed to be more hands off. I know we're starting to develop this idea now that I hear a lot of times parents say, I can't deal with them anymore. They've learned enough now. They're on their home. We can't do that to our children. In fact, the high school and middle school ages is when they need us the most. So that's almost when we have to become even more firm and more strong so that we can save our children. We shouldn't use profanity around our children. I know that's extremely difficult. We need to have more serious conversations. One of the best things I think we can have are parenting programs. Again, I got back to the parenting programs. We're political, but they also have parenting programs. We need to have parenting programs where two strong mother and father who demonstrated they've raised conscious African children come together and set up once a week. We all go there and learn parenting techniques. If you're hitting your child and you're angry at your child and you're out of control, then that's not good. Many times people use violence when they've run out of other options. Sometimes they use violence when they didn't even try any other option. It's very, very important that with our children we have them understand why things happen. And sometimes our punishments could be something like extra chores. They could be something like exercises. They could be something like they're forced to read a book that they're not going to like. So we have to, again, work on. If you know your child, you know how to discipline them. You know that they love doing double dutch, so you take away double dutch that week. If they don't have anything to do, then you can't really discipline your child. Did that answer your question, sister?
Definitely. And one thing that you touched on... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I wanted to... I did want to read because I don't know if I felt firm enough for our people yet to understand how horrible the school system is. I do want to read some statistics just to help people understand that, if that's all right with you.
Yes, sir.
So every day in America, this is according to Marion Wright Edelman's foundation called the Children's Defense Fund. Every 4 seconds, a black public school student is suspended in this country. Every 34 seconds, a black public school student is corporally punished. Corporally punished means that the child is completely humiliated in some form or fashion, which can include, I remember reading about a child in New York who was forced to eat the dirt off the floor, and they said, that's because you come from a poor environment, so you should get used to this. And the child was forced to eat dirt. I've seen where children have been forced to sit in a chair and everybody in the class walks around and points at the child and calls them stupid because they did something in the class. That's corporal punishment. Every 50 seconds, a black high school student drops out. Every minute, a black child is arrested in this country. Every 2 minutes, a black baby is born into poverty. Every 5 minutes, a black baby is born to a teen mother. Every 17 minutes, a black child is arrested for a violent crime. Every hour, a black baby dies before his or her first birthday. Every 4 hours, a black child or teen dies in an accident. Every 8 hours, a firearm kills a black child or a teen. Also, according to Malcolm X grassroots research of just studying police reports, they found out in 2000, please check this out for yourselves, anybody who's listening. It's called Operation Ghetto Storm, I believe. But they found out, I think in 2012, every 36 hours, a black person was killed by a police officer or security guard in this country. In 2013, it's become worse. And since the Trayvon Martin case, Trayvon was not the exception. It was the norm. Because if you look at that, every 28 hours, a black person is killed in this country by the police or by a security guard. So the schools are very successful at doing what they are intended to do, which is perpetuate a social order with us on the bottom as a permanent underclass. Dr. Clark used to say, a powerful people will never teach a powerless people how to take their power. It just won't happen. So we can't expect our children to truly be successful in such an environment. Oh, I know. I wanted to get back to the ritual, sister, because I wanted to make sure I answered those properly for you. There's other key rituals we need to have. We need to have naming ceremonies. Even before a child is born, we used to have rituals where they would try to identify as a community what is the purpose of the child. Well, that means you have to have in mind what skills and tasks we need completed in our community. So if we need more engineers, before the child is even born, we say we're going to train this child to be an engineer. Now, once the child comes out, we find they have better skills in other areas, and we mold them in that area. But they're born here with a purpose. Another thing is the women usually go for a walk in the woods in many different African societies, and they identify together a song that belongs to that child. So when that child is born, they sing that song. When the child is growing, they sing that song. If the child misbehaves, oftentimes the mother will just sing that song, and the child will remember their purpose and get themselves back in order. We talk about discipline. Our ancestors, the rituals our ancestors came up with were brilliant. They were all designed for purpose. It was not just for celebration. It was not just to do. Everything they did had a purpose. So that song would carry you all the way through, even when a child would graduate through their rites of passage initiation. Their family would sing that song. And I've seen where that song has brought children to tears instantly because their whole family remembers that song that pertains to that one child. Another example, when I was studying in Ghana, you would walk into a room. Are you still there, my sister?
Yes, sir.
You would walk into a room and you would be talking. Two adults would be talking. A child may come into the room and would rub their forehead. You would look and immediately, like I constantly saw this happening, when children would come in and just rub their foreheads. And I said to the person who was there in the house one time, why does the child do that? When they come in, they seem to rub their head when we're talking. I said the child does that to remind us that there's a child present in the room and that two adults should not have the same conversation that they had when the child is not present. That the child's ears should not hear what is going on between these two adults. So please make sure that the conversation is appropriate for that young child. And they were saying all that with one simple mark of their forehead. That's why the rituals were so essential. And now today when I teach our children that, the young children, they should rub their foreheads when they come into the room to show that they're present, they'll do it. It's excellent. It reminds the adults you don't use certain language around it. But I had one child who was in the car, her aunt and mother were arguing, using profanity back and forth. And she was back there rubbing the forehead. The parents, the mother and the aunt turned around and said, girl, what the world's wrong with you? What's going on? And then she was able to explain that ritual to them. And they even corrected themselves and said, right, we shouldn't be talking like this in front of her. She's just a little baby. So even when the children do the rituals, it corrects the adult. Many people are familiar with the call and response about go and may. Different cultures, that comes from the Khan culture, but different cultures have different ways of doing call and response. It's much better to come to your child. It's better to say, you don't go, quiet, shut up, all of those. It's better to just say, I go, and the child says, I may. And they understand right away you have something important to transmit to them. So every single ritual we had, it had some type of purpose. We need to have rites of passage and teach our young women how to be strong young women. We need to have rites of passage that teach our strong boys what it means to be a strong African man, particularly in the midst of war. Particularly as descendants. We're now here, prisoners of war. That's the best way we can explain it. I do want to give you a proverb, too, that I really like, that talks about fathers and their sons. The proverb, are you still there, my sister?
Yes, sir.
The proverb says this. It says, fathers are to sons what blacksmiths are to swords. It is the job of the blacksmith not only to make the sword, but also to maintain its edge of sharpness. It is the job of the father to keep his son sharp and save him from the dullness of foolishness. He gives his son that sharp edge through discipline. So in my mind, when I read this, I'm picturing a father who's helping maybe his 3 sons and his daughter with their homework. I have seen mothers who I know where I grew up, there was one mother who had 12 children. She couldn't read very well, but every single one of those children was brilliant. They were sharp. She educated themselves. She educated them herself. She was brilliant. There's some people we have around us who are excellent at being parents, excellent at being mothers. She was a single parent, and she did this on her own. I'm sure those children, not all those children were hers. Some of them were like her sister's children, and she was just excellent at doing this. So we need to find those people. We need to celebrate them, and we need to put money in their pockets. Another thing, too, African center schools that I've seen are always underfunded. The parents will choose to buy Lexuses and Benzes instead of putting that same money into the school. Our children are our greatest investment. They are absolutely priceless. They deserve all the money that could go into a flat screen television, all the money that could go in to anything else. And we need our fathers to start caring about our children more than the football games, more than the latest iPhones. We need our mothers to not make excuses for their children. We need to get away from saying stuff like, oh, he's tired and that's why he didn't greet anybody, or he's tired and that's why he's talking disrespectful to people. That's ridiculous. We can't tolerate that at all. Mothers must not make excuses for their children's behavior. They cannot continue to treat their sons like boyfriends. A lot of women I see do that, and then they wonder why their sons start disrespecting them like their boyfriends who left did. We cannot continue to carry on like that.
That's very true. That's very true. That's something that women definitely have to work on, because so many times they can't keep a man in their life, and so they make their son their man. And sometimes it goes a little further than that. I'm not even going there today, but either way is very unhealthy and very destructive. We have to stop that.
I've had children who show up to my class, and I'm like, why are you so tired? And they're like, well, my mother wanted to have a movie night last night. And like, a movie night in the middle of a school week, that does not make sense unless he says, well, my mother was lonely, she wanted some company and all that, so I had to stay up. Or, I bought my mother, gifts because I want to make my mother feel good. All these things where they, like you said, like I was just saying, that they're playing the role of the boyfriend. That's completely unacceptable.
Oh, definitely. I've even seen pictures on Facebook where somebody's like, yeah, my son's massaging my feet. And I'm like, that is the sickest thing I've ever heard in my life. But, we're not going to even go there because we could be on that all night. I'm not going to start preaching on that subject. All right, let's see. Let's go back to the phone lines here and see. We might have some callers. I'm not sure if they're just listening in or if they have a question or comment. 9803, you're live on War on the Horizon.
I'd like to thank you all for warning the way that y'all do. I actually came in on the end of the conversation as far as the topic goes, but from what I've heard, it's just, I'm learning, not really too much to say. I'm actually, the concept that the brother was speaking about with the song for correction that the whole family knows, that's genius. That's genius. And, I'm kind of proud that it only comes from my people, you know what I'm saying? So, really, I'm just listening and supporting. So, hope all is well with y'all. And willing to figure out Bibi Fahodie.
Bibi Fahodie. And thank you for listening.
And again, this is the genius that our ancestors have accumulated over thousands and thousands of years. We don't realize that we have been in positions of power way longer than we've been in a position that we're in now, is a position of servitude. For thousands of years, we've ruled nations, and we have expertise in developing character, with expertise in developing the brilliant minds of our children. We have argued, even today, even in this position that we're in, where we're highly educated servants, we're still the most intelligent. One of the brothers who scored a perfect score in the SATs is a young black man. All of their education that in fact, every time we score high on the SAT, they've changed the test. There's a book called None of the Above. You can check out that book. It's by Owens. And in that book, he describes how every time we scored the highest, they had to change the SATs because we were doing that. There's another book that everybody should check out called It's a book called The Mismeasure of Man, and in that book, it has the evidence you'll need to prove that the SATs, the LSATs, the Stanford Nines, all of these tests were created by racists to demonstrate. They even have quotes from these racists to try to demonstrate the superiority of Europeans. And also, go online, please, brothers and sisters, and look up the man who made up ADHD. Before he died, he admitted that he made that up. He admitted that they made billions of dollars off of ADHD. That's something that he constructed. And it's just as phony as saying that black people have the disease that Samuel Cartwright said we had, which was drapetomania, saying that we had this desire to always want to free the plantation, and that was somehow a disease. So drapetomania, look that one up too, but these are just made up diseases that we're allowing the Europeans to define our children. And basically a school system designed based on the psychology and structure of white children, by its very design and nature, will actually destroy the intellectual potential of all black children within that system. Think about how dumb does it sound to measure people's intelligence by which bubbles they can fill in. The content and design of the curricula and tests in the American school or public school system is based on the thinking of an implicit child. That's a child, they take the tests and they have a white middle-class child answer certain questions. Then they determine that to be the correct answer for those. So if your child does not fill in the same bubbles as the white middle-class child, then they are not considered intelligent, and certain doors will not open up to them. I do want to point this out. An African-centered teacher, if you come into an African-centered teacher's classroom, you should ask the children a question, and the teacher would not know the answer to the question. But if there's 20 students in that class, you should get 16, 17, 18 different answers to that one question. So if you said tomorrow to a class full of children that are properly being educated, how do you solve black people's problems? You would get 16 hands raised and several different answers. And we know that there's more than one way to solve black people's problems. In fact, if we looked at it like you make money off solving your own problems, then there would be no unemployment in the black community. There was no unemployment in Africa. Everybody had a job and a task. So with that in mind, that's an African education system. But you go into that different system, a European system, and you ask the students a question. The teacher already knows the answer to the question. Why? Because it's in a book that they have in front of them, and it is part of the standardized test that they have to make everybody think in that same exact way. So how many students raise their hand out of the 20? Maybe 3. Out of those 3, how many have that answer that's in the book? 1 or 2. Those 1 or 2 are considered the most intelligent in the class. Those are removed from the others and told that they're better than the others. And then they are put on a constant process of being trained to aid and embed in the destruction of black people by becoming highly educated servants. And that's essentially how the school system works. The aggression, the energy, the pride, the defiance is not a disease or disorder that we find in black children. We need to keep the riddling out of our community. The black children who act like that are very healthy. They're extremely healthy. They're brilliant. They are rebelling against the system that was designed to destroy them. We couldn't ask for more happier, healthier, productive children than the ones who absolutely refuse to be brainwashed, dumbed down, and made into imitation beings.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we're going to be going back to the phone lines in just a moment. But you said something earlier, and I thought that it was interesting because I was talking about this again earlier, I think last week. You were talking about how when children become older, we should be more hands-on as far as parents. And it reminds me of in Africa how really there's just a childhood and adulthood. There's really not an adolescence. You're a child until you go through your rites of passage, then you're an adult. And I think that we give our children it's almost like a disservice to give them that adolescence where they think they're kind of grown, but you know they're not children, but they're not adults, and it creates a lot of confusion and rebellion and issues. Do you think that's a problem?
Yes. I do think though there's a good book called Why Our Children Hate Us, and I think we should read that. Check that book out. It's called Why Our Children Hate Us by Eric Grimes and Butch Slaughter. And that goes into more detail of what we need to be doing, like why our children feel the way they feel. Well, pieces, again, we have to, when they think something, we need to allow them to flush out their thoughts. A lot of times we just shut down their thoughts. We also need to give our children scenarios when they're just going into young adulthood. And those scenarios can be real life situations, but also just situations to see how do they react. So some of the questions could be, something as simple as your friends are all smoking weed. And if they say you don't smoke weed, then something's wrong with you. You got problems. How are you going to deal with that? At first, your child's probably going to try and give you the answer you want to hear. But let them talk. Let them talk their ways through these different situations and continue to give them different scenarios. Again, I spoke earlier in the show for anybody who wasn't on. In the car, the radio stations are horrible. They're ridiculous. So just cut them off, right? You can listen to certain ones, the news stations, but for the most part, cut them off and just have conversations. And the conversations could be a story about your life, and then let them. It could be short. Also, keep them. In Africa they have a saying. It's called asampatia. In Twi, they say asampatia, which means the truth is always short. So we have to be briefer. We're talking at our children. We make a couple statements. Maybe we say a proverb, and then we let them run with it. And then we see what they think about it. This is how we get their feedback. And then challenge their thoughts. If they say something like, well, I'll smoke the weed just to get them to leave me alone, they'll say, but what will that do to your system? And I share stories with the children. You tell them about Len Bias. Len Bias tries crack one time, and he dies. They need to know about those, that every decision they make, there's a consequence. Sometimes the consequences you can get by, but other times you're just destroying yourself in the long run. We really want them to be able to think on their own. If what we have is powerful enough, then we should be able to, when they turn a certain age and they go away from us, they should still hold on to the morals and values. I study a lot of other groups. One of the groups I studied is the Amish. And one of the things the Amish do is, at a certain age, they let their children go out onto the real world. And one of the things they have to give up is their family connection. The studies could be biased, but you do find, and of course the Amish are not really outsiders in this country. They're accepted. But 90% of them come back after they've experienced the outside world, because they realize that is chaos, that is destruction, those are the destroyers. I don't want part of that. I want to be part of those who are balanced, who are whole, who practice ma'at, our truth, balance, justice, order, reciprocity. Our children want to be around love. They want to be around structure. They want to be around order. That's what their nature calls for. And again, our children are born brilliant. They are wonderful from the beginning. If the children are using profanity and talking back, it's because they've been contaminated by this decadent, wicked, and destructive society. The culture here is destroying us. There's a key quote I want to give to by Amilcar Cabral. He says, and I think a lot of times the nationalists miss this piece as black nationalists, and I'm clearly a black nationalist. But a lot of times we miss this. And that's the point of culture. We underestimate culture. Amilcar Cabral says you measure a people's potential for liberation based on how different their culture is from that of their oppressors. If we practice the same culture, same values as our oppressors, we cannot change from them. What we will have is a black face on white power. We can no longer have that. We see the same thing happens with the schools, like you mentioned, my sister, when you said we'll have schools that call themselves African-centered or black schools, but they're really just teaching in the same form and fashion as European schools. They have the same intent methods. And for the most part, they're just trying to create a backdoor into the mainstream. Those schools usually don't last long. But they're also not going to lead towards our liberation. I still argue that we haven't come together and had a real concerted effort where we put our money and all of our energy into developing amazing schools. There's a great book by Kwesi Konadu you should read called View from the East that shows a school in Brooklyn. These brothers and sisters bought up a whole dead-end street and built businesses that went all the way down. Their school was at the end. Everybody was required to work after school. And that was an excellent example of what we can do when we bring our minds together. But, it was around for years. But black people, they started to believe, maybe these schools aren't that bad. Let's put our children in public schools or in charter schools, and the institutions were destroyed. In the East, used to have people like John Coltrane. You would come and play for the school. People came there to raise lots of money for the school. The elder who ran the school was a genius, Baba Jitueusi. He just passed not too long ago. But, brilliance. In that book, you can read about what their curriculum was. You could read about what their school day looked like. Definitely Pan-Africanist, definitely Black nationalist, and starting to pick up the African cultural practices.
Thank you.
Since I see we don't have a lot of time left, can I still give a couple more books for our people to read?
You sure can. If we have to go over a minute or two to get the last 2 calls in, are you able to do that, or do you have to be right off at 9 o'clock?
No, that's fine.
Okay, yes, sir. Go ahead.
So one of the books I recommend is called Black Children, Their Roots, Culture, and Learning Styles by Janice Hale Benson. Again, that's Black Children, Their Roots, Culture, and Learning Styles. Every person who interacts with a black child is a teacher. There's an African proverb that says, if the African elders do not teach the children, the village idiots will. But we're in a time place now where the village idiots are teaching our children. So again, when people say to me, why don't our children pull up their pants? Well, because we've been colonized and we've been controlled. And since we are not fighting back, then the village idiots will teach our children how to wear your pants low. That's one great book. Another good book is called Sankofa, African Thought and Education, by Eleni Tedla. That's Eleni Tedla. Of course, by these at a black bookstore. Sankofa, African Thought and Education. That book shows traditional African teaching styles of the people in Ethiopia, traditional Ethiopian educationists. Another one called The Heartbeat of Indigenous Africa. This is by Sambuli Mosha, Sambuli Mosha. The Heartbeat of Indigenous Africa also looks at traditional African teaching methods and practices. That includes the proverbs, that includes stories, it includes more intense rituals. There's another book too, if you can get a hold of it, called An Infusion of African and African American Content in the School Curriculum. That was put out by Asa Hilliard and Larry Obadeli Williams. This book actually has John Henry Clark's actual curriculum in it. If you can get a hold of that, that would be excellent. Curriculum in this book is probably about 20 pages. It goes in deep detail in terms of African world history. As we know, Dr. Clark was brilliant, and he really puts it in that book. There's a good book by good sister Ia Reid called Holistic Parenting from a Pan-African Perspective. Again, that's Holistic Parenting from a Pan-African Perspective. That book is excellent. I recommend all parents should read that book. Again, if you have groups of families that come to meet on a regular basis, to have think tanks, to watch DVDs, to have discussion, to serve food, that we can start to build all types of institutions out of those think tanks. We have to have these think tanks, and we have to be very quiet about them. Traditional Africa, again, you had secret societies, and you just go about and you do the work. We need people who do the work. We had Carter G. Woodson used to say, we don't need any more leaders. We need doers, because leaders only talk about what doers are doing. Also, we have here Black Family Rituals. You asked the question about that. It's a book called Black Family Rituals by Edward Sims. You can look at that one. That includes the rites of passage, includes the naming ceremonies. It includes just several different other rituals you can do with your children, including the marriage ceremonies, the vows of reaffirmation ceremonies, different home building and financial management rituals that you do. So that's another good one. African Power is an exceptional book, affirming African indigenous socialization in the face of the cultural wars. That's by Asa Hilliard. Anything by Asa Hilliard is excellent. Anything by Ivan Sertima is important to teach our children. Anything by Amos Wilson, Dr. Clark, Carter G. Woodson, anything by these writers is exceptional.
Thank you. That's definitely going to come in handy. I'm definitely going to look up some of those books when we get off air tonight. Let's see. We'll run back to the phone lines real quick. 2255, are you just listening in, or did you have a question or comment? 2255. All right, I'm going to assume that they are just listening. I guess one last question from me, and then we can wrap up with anything that you want to wrap up with. One thing that I have a real problem with in the public schools, one thing that you mentioned earlier, is just our history being interrupted, because the only thing that we ever talk about is the Mayafa, and that's can be very damaging, because while they need to know our history, that's not our only history. That's like one part of it, and it can be very demoralizing the way it's taught, because all we hear about are the shackles. We don't hear about the revolutions and how we fought back. We never hear any of that kind of stuff, and it can make it seem like we can't win. So what would you say about that as far as a curriculum that would teach us how to win versus victimization? Is there a way that we can go about doing that?
Absolutely. This one may be hard for people to hear, but at times, the majority of our schooling, we should act as a large part of our schooling. Let me say this properly. We should operate as if European does not exist. That's a large part of the schooling process. A lot of times I find that we, the black nationalists, build up this enemy to be undefeatable. And we don't, I don't think, study enough and discuss enough just our glory in terms of when they're not even around. Because for a large period of their history, they weren't a threat at all. Dr. Clark in his curriculum points out that there was a couple times where we could have completely wiped them out. And we didn't have the same heart as they did, and we chose not to. What I'm saying, though, is I see sometimes we build in the minds of our children that they should be afraid and they should have no fear. We should teach them not to be fearful anymore. We teach them that they're great despite any person who's going to perpetuate a system of oppression against them, which means they have to be able to identify a system of oppression, because the Asians will be coming soon. Arabs will be coming soon. We have blacks who will be trying to perpetuate a system of oppression upon us. So part of their schooling has to be able to identify systems of oppression. Now, how do they fight against those systems? Yes, we definitely, right now, black people, we forget oftentimes that black children are just little black people. And they think, just like the adult black people think there's only three ways to fight back against the system: riot, protest, or march. And those three ways actually don't do anything. Dr. Clark said that marching is a waste of good shoe leather. When you riot, they have all types of new weaponry they love to test out. They love to make an example of black people by shooting them with new weapons that they've created. And we said protesting, rioting. And the protesting, the system was designed so that people will come out and protest. In fact, that's part of how the Black Power movement was seized. Black people came out and protest. We need more jobs. We need more jobs. They gave a couple people government jobs, and the rest of the people dispersed and said, well, we must be successful because we were living vicariously through that one person. So, yes, our people need to learn about Ella Baker's model of liberation. The idea that you could go and empower groups of people so they could empower other groups of people. They have to learn about Frantz Fanon's message. They need to be learning about, there's two good books by Obed Shacklin on the art of leadership that are packed with different methods of liberation. And they need to start to see, again, we need to make our way is the norm. Abnormal is the other way. So it is normal for us to be healthy, whole, ruling Africans. That is normal. It is normal for us to be in balance with nature. It is normal for us to have male-female relationships that are positive and productive. That we are the norm. They need to start to see that other things, that the other unhealthy things are not the norm, but we don't have to necessarily say that. They're so observant, they can see that. I remember talking to a young European and asked him basically, how do you learn how to hate black people so much? because I was at a predominantly white institution at the time. And he says, you know, my parents never said to us, you should hate black people. It's just stuff like when the black person came to deliver the mail, their parents would always wipe off the doorknob. You know, they would do stuff. It was their actions. Black children oftentimes learn that black people are inferior when you take them to an aquarium and they see white people having fun and there's not a lot of black people there. And then when you take them to a supermarket, it's all beat up, run down, black people are angry and fighting, you learn that a lot of times that white is superior, black is inferior. But that's a false idea. But if you have a discussion with your child and you start to bring them around black people who are owning their own businesses, those type of ideas will start to go out the window. And you won't even have to say it, because they'll come to that conclusion themselves and it'll stay a lot longer than if you were to say to them directly. Now, don't get me wrong. Certain times you got to say it directly, right? And they'll remember, oh, I remember my mother saying so-and-so. I remember my father, as you hear when you read autobiographies of people like Malcolm, where he said his mother said, don't eat no pork. That stayed in his head. You know, I remember clearly when sitting around black men watching different television shows and them saying, man, black people didn't make up no jokes like that. That's a white man joke. When they said stuff like, oh, the black man in the barbershop used to tell me that the pyramids were built by Africans, or that the tests were biased. We used to hear all these little things and they stuck in our mind. As I got older, I was able to go and research those things. So we constantly have to drop little seeds of knowledge in their heads like that. But we also don't have to always be direct. We have to have multiple methods and strategies of empowering our people.
Yes, sir. Well, I have definitely enjoyed this program. Is there anything else that you wanted to say that we didn't get a chance to get to?
No, I just want us to win.
Yes, sir. I think we can all agree on that. Well, I do want to thank you so much for being our guest today. I really appreciate it. You have dropped just bomb after bomb after bomb, and I know people were taking notes and are really going to implement some of the things that you said and also read a lot of the books that you gave us. I mean, I lost count of how many books you recommended to us. So, again, thank you for the information. It's very appreciated.
Thank you, sister, for having me.
Yes, sir. Abibi Fahodie.
Abibi Shorty.
All right, so that wraps up another program on War on the Horizon. In case you missed the beginning of the program, Brother Genie will be back in 2 weeks. Next week, we have Sister Nefertari, who has not been on in a while. And you know I've been protesting to bring her back. So we get Sister Nefertari. The ladies are taking over for the next couple weeks. Coming back, she's going to have Brother Body Shots on her program. And that is definitely going to be hot. I'm guessing that's probably going to be like a 4 or 5 hour show. Because every time she do decide to come back and do a show, it's like lasts until midnight. So if you're going to call in that program, call in very, very early. Again, if you want to keep in touch with me, you can do so either by going to authorangela.freeman.com. You can check me out on Facebook under Angela Freeman. Type that in and it should come up, or Author Angela Freeman might bring it up as well. Or you can just get to me on YouTube if you type in Angela Freeman. I'm going to do my best to upload this program tomorrow because it is so full of information. I'm sure everybody's going to want to get all of the book information and everything that the brother recommended tonight. So be sure to do that. Tune in tomorrow for the Cypher program. And everybody enjoy your evening. Thanks again for tuning in. Abibi Fahodie.
Say I'm 3/5 human being, but God, I just don't see it. Plus a subhuman is the one teaching. Plus a subhuman is the one leeching. Let's start with rat, cat, dog. That was hybridized to give you the hog. Trichinosis, and that's the arteries clogged. You scream for more Lord and the Lord. What's your genus, species, kingdom, or phylum? What tribe you from? If you don't know, better find you one. The living cadaver, cave dwelling, cracker, dog, best friend. Wants you to emulate him to the very end. Yeah, while you kill your hair and bleach your skin, they tan and plumping their lips up to be your replacement. But this ain't raid for roaches, this is full-scale warfare. But you looking for fatigues, guns, and